Hello and thanks for joining us in TV and Business Daily. I am Chiwendu Osisiago, and today we shall be discussing on COVID-19 lockdown, the impact on the Nigerian economy. But we shall be going on a quick break, and after this break, we'll continue. So stay with us. My name is Chiwendu Osisiago, presenter at Television Nigerian Business Daily. In a globalizing world, ours is to keep you engaged, informed, and educated on contemporary happenings in the business world. We therefore command a special audience of business-minded viewers who are eager to know more about business. I mean, your business. Why don't you take advantage of our special affordable offer to let the world know about your concepts, your goods, and of course, your services? You can call us on 080-3071-6959 or 070-3234-9054. You can also visit us at Television Nigerian in Guzapi, Abuja, and follow us on all the social media handles on Facebook, YouTube, and of course, on Twitter at Television Nigerian. Your business is our concern. Coronavirus pandemic has impacted the global economy in such a devastating manner that is unknown to history in decades. The world is still combating the pandemic with huge fronts, unprecedented loss of human lives amidst economic matters in most countries occasioned by lockdown and relative uncertainty as to when this ends and what to do post-pandemic. Our guests will be discussing the said advanced impact on global economy, possibility of any positives and forecast of post-pandemic scenario. But before we proceed with the discussion, let's look at the business updates for today. Transactions on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange on Tuesday witnessed another drop, and share prices as bears sustained a grip on the local bars following profits taken by investors. The local bars recorded only 4 gainers against 27 losers, led by Champa Breweries PLC and Wando PLC among all the blue chip firms that experienced downswing in their shares. Consequently, the all-share index dipped by 815.91 basic points or 3.35% to close at 22,629.92 index points as against 22,920.41 recorded the previous day. Market capitalization of equities depreciated by 152 billion naira from 11.945 trillion naira the previous day to 11.793 trillion naira as market sentiment remained on negative territory. Barring any last-minute change in plans, the disbursement of the first tranche of the Central Bank of Nigerian 50 billion naira targeted credit facility will begin on Thursday. The fund, which is being managed by the Nisal Microfinance Bank, has received over 80,000 applications. The managing director, Nisal Microfinance Bank, Abubakar Kure, confirmed the development in a telephone interview with our correspondent. Kure, who did not provide the amount of the disbursed, and the first tranche said that those whose application were successful will start receiving their funds on Thursday. The National Bureau of Statistics on Tuesday said the consumer price index, which measures inflation, rose by 12.26% year-on-year in March. The Bureau in the CPI report said the 12.26% inflation for March is 0.06 percentage points higher than the 12.2% recorded in February. This is the highest inflation rate to be recorded by the economy in the last 23 months. The last time the index was as high as this was in April 2018, when the inflation rate was put at 12.48%. The report said the lockdown in Abuja, Lagos, and Ogun State, which started in April, and various major distribution in normal economic activities in several states, would not have any major impact on March inflation, which the report focused on. The capital market community has launched an initiative with the aim of raising 1 billion naira within the shortest time possible in a bid to support the fight against COVID-19 and its impact on the Nigerian economy. This was stated by the Acting Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission, Mary Uduk, in Abuja on Tuesday. She said the funds would assist in cushioning the effects of the pandemic on poor and vulnerable Nigerians, as well as providing some critical medical supplies. While acknowledging ongoing efforts at providing critical medical supplies and palliatives to Nigerians, Uduk stated that the Nigerian capital market community recognized that more still needed to be done, especially for the vulnerable and underprivileged in the society. And that's the business update on Television Nigerian. I am Chiwendu Osisiago. Now we shall be going on a quick break, and after this break, we shall be joining our correspondent in Macaulay Udo to give us updates on the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic on the Nigerian economy. So stay with us.
Chiwendu Osisiago, presenter Television Nigerian Business Daily. In a globalizing world, ours is to keep you engaged, informed and educated on contemporary happenings in the business world. We therefore command a special audience of business-minded viewers who are eager to know more about business, I mean your business. Why don't you take advantage of our special affordable offer to let the world know about your concepts, your goods, and of course, your services? You can call us on 080-3071-6959 or 070-3234-9054. You can also visit us at Television Nigerian in Guzapi, Abuja, and follow us on all our social media handles on Facebook, YouTube, and of course, on Twitter at Television Nigerian. Your business is our concern.
Thank you, Chiwendu Osisiagu, and this is Economic Review on Business Daily. For commodity-dependent economies like Nigeria, the fall in global demand stemming from the pandemic will increase her fiscal deficit. Take Brent crude, for instance, as at the 10th of April, it was sold for $26 per barrel, as against Nigeria's projected $57 per barrel. Selling at $57 per barrel, Nigeria is to run at a $2.18 trillion deficit. Considering that oil accounts for like 9,000 of our exports declining demand as well as a fall in price is sure to adversely affect the volume and the value of net export. Being that we did intend to fund like a budget on the petroleum enterprise, the country is forced to cut down on a planned expenditure, which is the right thing to do right now. On the other hand, government purchases will increase and will result in us running a budget deficit because we are already utilizing fiscal stimulus. Measures to counteract the fall in consumer spending is the reason why our governments are putting out palliatives. Already, our debt service to revenue ratio is at 60%, which leaves us at a 40% deficit, which is likely to worsen considering the decline in oil prices. This is quite like a constraining factor and is sure to aggravate the economic impact of the COVID-19 outbreak. And it kind of makes it more difficult for the government to weather this crisis. So the COVID-19 pandemic has affected many components of demand, but I'd like for us to focus on 4 of these components. Talk about the decline in consumption, increased government expenditure, decline in investment, as well as decline in net export. Let's take this one at a time. Decline in consumption. The restriction in movement, people cannot go to the places where they want to buy stuff, and even if you have the money, you cannot get to the market. Markets are closed and only operational 2 days in a week. There's poor expectation of future income. As a result of this, individuals are likely to spend only or solely on essential commodities like food, shelter, as well as electricity. There's erosion of wealth due to fall in value of assets and the stock market. Next is the decline in investment. Investment by firm is largely impeded, courtesy of the uncertainty, not knowing how long the pandemic will last for, has investors stalling. So the profit outlook is small, and then investors do not want to invest until this pandemic phases out. There's also increased government expenditure. There's significant expansion of fiscal policies. Government expenditure is rising, courtesy of palliatives and the slash in income tax revenue. There's increase in healthcare expenditure, setting up isolation centers, and the likes. There's also a decline in net export. For instance, the limited market for export due to fall in global demand, border closure for non-essential trade, as well as disrupted supply chain. These and more are reasons why the economy of Nigeria is being impeded. Countries around the world actually have closed their borders to non-essential traffic, and this in turn has had an effect on the global supply chain for exports, as it is disrupted. And it is true that a decline in export as well as a fall in price rubs off negatively on the value of a country's currency. But it kind of makes the commodity more affordable, as can be seen in the case of petroleum products. However, the limited market for non-essential goods and services nullifies an envisaged positive effect on the export of Nigerian crude especially. I'll hand you now over to Chiwendu Osisiogu for more on Business Daily.
The governor of New York is crying out for help. It currently has capacity for 53,000 intensive care unit beds, and current total need is about 140,000. New York State needs more money than the stimulus package provides. So there's a hole of about $15 billion, and the stimulus only provides for $3.8 billion for the state of the New York. UK is calling for 250,000 volunteer workers to assist with the deliveries to the vulnerable. The Spanish government is having to convert hotels into health facilities. The Italian Prime Minister cried openly as he strained to a wit's end. India has completely locked down 1.3 billion people in a bid to curtail the spread. The stories are appallingly scary. The information is terribly scary when we see our status, those of our public health system, and the level of information and acceptance of COVID-19 downtown. Please, let's imbibe safe and healthy practices. Wash your hands as often as possible, sanitize as much as possible, and ensure social distances are maintained. Please, and please, I can't shout out loud enough. Review your trips from over the last 3 weeks and contact check on people you would have met and those they've met with too. Self-isolate if necessary. We need to break the chain of transmission. Please call loved ones. Spread the love, care, and concern. Let's assure ourselves that we'll all pass through this and come out strong. COVID-19 is real and in Nigeria, just like every other country of the world. May God Almighty guide us true. By the Patriots Club of Nigeria.
Many thanks for staying with us, and in case you're just joining us, it's TVN Business Daily. Like I said earlier, we shall be discussing on the impact of the COVID-19 on the Nigerian economy. Immaculate gave us an analysis already, but my guest will give us details on the impacts. He is a public affairs analyst and entrepreneur. He is no other than Mr. Edward Okuje. You're welcome to TVN Business.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
It's good to have you again.
Thank you.
Okay, speaking on the impact of the Nigerian economy, based on the fact that coronavirus is everywhere, what is your own take on it?
Well, coronavirus, this COVID-19, as it is something that is unprecedented. Nobody expected it. No economics in the world expected it. No political leader expected it. Scientists didn't expect it. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, we have a pandemic in our hands. And the first casualty, apart from the people who are getting affected, is the economy, of course, because governments have to shut down their economics to traders, to businesses, to any kind of movement that is not essential. And this has negatively impacted on the economics because normally economics thrive on productivity. When people are able to move around, cash is able to flow around, and then there is productivity, there's input, there's output. That's how economies grow. But for the past 2 months or thereabout, I'm talking of generally now, economics have been shut down and no activities, and you can see what the impact is. Everybody is projecting that almost every country in the world are going into recession. So this is what we know as this is what is known as the global economic recession. That is very imminent because there's no way we can escape this. So it's going to happen. Okay,
on to your own personal understanding, what do you think is the status quo now?
Well, right now, if you talk about Nigeria, for example, you know that our major source of foreign income is oil, and the price of oil has gone down. As at yesterday, Bonny Light was trading for $11. Brent crude was trading for $23, which is very low because from reports from the NNPC, even the cost of production is $30. So, I mean, it means they're even selling at less than what they produce. And of course, that's not the only problem. The problem now is nobody is buying. I mean, there's crude oil glut all over the world. Most countries that produce oil, I mean, the OPEC, when they had their meeting, they talked about cutting down production by 10 million barrels per day. Now, the excess in the market is about 30 million barrels per day. Now, if you cut down 10 million, you still have 20 million barrels per day in excess. And when you have excess, the prices will drop. So, factories are not running, vehicles are not moving, people are just indoors. So, the demand for crude oil has completely flattened. So, that is a very big problem for Nigeria because that's our major source of foreign income, foreign earning. So, as it is now, we have to fall back on our reserves. And how long can that take us? So that's the problem we are facing right now. How long can our reserve take us? Because right now the government is not making any money when it comes to foreign exchange.
Okay, but with the oil now, how do you think it's going to affect us, like in our daily activities and all that?
Yeah, it will not really affect from the start. Now, this is how it works. Now, sometimes governments can run for a few months without income. So maybe they have a reserve. For example, we already have our budget. And in that budget, we already have a deficit in the 2020 budget already. And about 4 weeks ago, the National Assembly had to cut down on their budget, overview, so that at least it can reflect the new oil prices. But then, even after that, they pegged the oil prices at $35, and it still came down to about 23. So, which means that when everything comes back to normal, they still have to cut down on the budget, on the national budget for 2020. And how are we sure that, oil will still remain at that price? A lot of economists are projecting that oil will go to negative. I'm not sure that can happen anyway, but it's something that we've never seen before, and nobody knows what's going to happen. So I think it's going to affect us in the long run. Maybe not now. Maybe sometime when the economies open up, when they open up Lagos, Abuja, and Ogun, you may see some economic activities going up. People producing, and markets opened, and people moving all around. But the challenge will be government expenditure, because you do know that macroeconomics, the government expenditure influences demand. Because when you talk about construction, when you talk about public works, when you talk about health sector, agricultural sector, these are sectors that are heavily dependent on government expenditure. Now, when the government expenditure drops, it means that there's going to be less velocity of money in circulation. And what happens is that at some point, it begins to reflect on the economy, because salaries get delayed, and when salary gets delayed, of course, people's demand will drop. When people's demand drop, production drops. When production drops, it moves to unemployment. So this is the sequence of events that would likely occur in 2020 before we can start taking off any solution.
Okay, thank you. Okay, looking at the cases now in Nigeria, we know we have over 700 cases now. And with the lockdown, do you think the government are going to extend the lockdown to another 2 weeks again? Or after this week, then the next week, it will be over?
Personally speaking, I don't think it was the right idea in the first place for the government to lock down. Because now, let me put it this way, you have two options. It's like the devil on the deep blue sea. It's like the rock and a hard place. Now, you are grappling with a health pandemic. At the same time, you are grappling with economic pandemic. Now, most of these Western countries that could afford to shut down, so to speak, is because, I mean, they have palliative, they have measures that they've already put in place to cushion that effect. Now, if you take, for example, the United States of America, for example, they were able to come up with different income levels for their citizens to say, if you earn so amount, this is how much you are entitled to every 2 weeks. If you earn so amount, this is how much you are entitled to every 2 weeks. Now, if you do that, people can afford to stay indoor.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they can, I mean, it's a high-tech economy where people can order for anything online, it comes to their doorstep, electricity is constant and all of that. So economics like that, countries like that can actually, survive. But a country like Nigeria, where about 80% of our workforce are not on the regular services.
Yeah.
They are not on the regular services. There are people who are masons, there are people who are Okada riders, taxi drivers, people who earn income daily, not even weekly. In fact, data shows that about 23% of Nigerians earn the income daily. 23% of labor force earn their income daily. Another 18% earn their income weekly. So it's just about, few percentage that earn their income on a monthly basis. So when you have situations like that and you ask people to stay indoor, it's going to be very difficult because it will totally collapse their source of income. And when they don't have a source of income and there is no palliative. Now, yes, we know that governments are doling out some palliative in some areas, but it's not getting to everybody. And because it's not getting to everybody, people will find it difficult to survive. So I don't think in the first place this lockdown was suitable for an African economy. It is not, because we run an informal economic sector.
But the virus is contagious.
The virus is contagious, but I believe that there are other measures that could have been used. For example, schools could have been shut down, that's fine. Worship centers could have been shut down, that's fine. You can make it mandatory for people to wear their nose mask. You can make it mandatory for every businesses to have sanitizers, hand washing, equipment, and all of that in their places of business. But if you ask people to actually stay indoor, now this is 4 weeks running, right?
Yeah.
If any more extension will totally collapse the Nigerian economy, and I can tell you that any further extension from 4 weeks will collapse the Nigerian economy, because no economy can survive without palliative for 5 to 6 weeks without activity. Like I said before, economies run on productivity, and when there's no productivity, economy will collapse. Inflation will rise, unemployment will rise, and I don't think we're ready for this.
Okay, let's assume that after this week they'll call it off. So how do you see Nigeria post-lockdown? Like in terms of your businesses and probably every other thing?
Well, obviously,
are we going to go back to the way we were before?
We can get to the pre-COVID-19 era, okay, but not on the short run. It will take us probably 2-3 years to get to that point. We will struggle at first. Businesses will struggle, individuals will struggle, households will struggle. But we've been through this before. We just came out of recession 2 years ago. So we've been through this before. It's not something that is new to Nigerians. We've been through recession. We've been through high inflation before, just recently. I mean, not just long time ago, just recently. So I think we can survive. But businesses will struggle, okay, households will struggle, and individuals will struggle. But we can get to that pre-COVID-19 era, but not on the short run. I'm guessing maybe 2 years from now.
Okay. You as a farmer, what's your take on the hike of prices on food items? Going to the market now, you notice that food items, they're all expensive. And you as a farmer, what's your take on it?
Well, the increase in food items, I don't think it is a problem of the farmers, technically. Because you do know that agriculture has different subsectors. You have the farmers, you have the producers, which are like the processing factories. You have like people who are in the storage business, and you have people who are in the distribution business. Now, farmers don't necessarily keep their produce after they harvest. When they harvest this produce, they sell to the storage players and the processing players. So now the farmers don't really like harvest period is usually between September to October, November. After this time, farmers sell off their produce and they are getting ready for the next planting season. So I think the problem is, yes, of course, they are still all in the agricultural sector, but I think the problem lies in the middlemen, not the farmers. Farmers don't necessarily have produce with them anymore. They've sold off everything they've harvested since last year. So the problem of price hike is with the middlemen, which are the storage and the distributors and the retailers as well.
Okay, thank you. Moving forward, who was the fate of the dependent economies such as Africa?
I'm afraid because usually when you have an economic challenges like this, you run to international bodies like IMF, World Bank, and all of that. And last week, IMF just announced that more than 75 countries are knocking on their doors for bailout.
Okay.
And this is going to overwhelm them as an organization, because you do know that their resources are limited. Now, you have limited resources, and almost every country in the world coming to you to ask for bailouts. And I'm not sure they can. I'm not sure they can shoulder that responsibility. And then the other option, which would be richer nations such as America, China, Japan, they also have their own problems as well. And you can see America too also going into recession. China the same thing. China is already in recession. France is already in recession. So the problem is, who do you go to when you have these challenges? Who is going to bail you out? So at this time, African nations are on their own. Honestly speaking, they're on their own, because I think at the end of the day, African leaders would have to sit down and ask themselves some very serious questions, like what have we been doing for the past 6 decades? Because we've been so much dependent on aids from these foreign countries and from these international bodies to survive. You see nations depending on foreign aid to finance more than 50% of their budget. This doesn't make any sense. What if those countries don't give you money? What if those international bodies don't give you money? How would you survive? So we need to now sit down and look inwards in Africa. We have great potentials in agriculture, even in ICT, in services. We have great potentials. We can actually harness these potentials and begin to do something for ourselves in the next few years, because it will be wrong to assume that this is the last pandemic that the world will go through. Who knows, 20, 30 years from now, something else may come up. So post COVID-19, we need to start thinking, if something like this come up another time, how do we deal with it without having to depend on foreign nations and foreign bodies? So it's going to be tough, and everybody is going through. There's a saying that you don't ask a frog to give you a seed when you can see it squatting. So who would they run to? Everybody needs help right now.
Okay, so finally, what's your final take to our viewers and of course the government? Well,
for the let me start from the government. First thing they need to do is, now we cannot solve this problem in 1 year. It's not possible. But there's a Chinese proverb that says that the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. We need to start looking into other sectors. Now, we talk about crude oil all the time. Do you know that crude oil, yes, is our source, is our major source of foreign exchange, but crude oil is less than 15% of our GDP. Meaning that there are other sectors in Nigerian economy that are even producing more than crude oil. For example, the services sector. Services sector is over 50%. Agricultural sector is about 20%. Then before you now find the petroleum sector. So what the government needs to do right now is to look for a way to actually translate these other sectors for foreign exchange earning. For example, most farmers in Nigeria cannot export their farm produce because, number one, they have certain standards you need to meet in all these countries for you to be able to export your produce to those countries. Okay. Now, if you are not able to meet those standards, they'll tell you that Nigerian farmers, they use too much chemicals, they do this, they do that. So I think the government need to come in right now and actually do something about agricultural sector once and for all. This sector needs to grow. This sector needs to become Nigeria's major source of foreign exchange earning, not petroleum. Because, I mean, even our petroleum proven reserve, it will just last us for only 40 years. Just 40 years. So, after 40 years, what will we do? So, we need to begin now to begin to look at other sectors, such as the agricultural sector, even the services sectors. Nigerians are doing a lot of things. You have fashion designers, you have people who make shoes these days, you have furniture people. We can export all of these things. We can export fashion, we can export furniture, we can export anything in this country. The government need to start focusing on this thing for real this time, not just
in case of any other pandemic.
Yes, yes, for real, not just for the purpose of news, just to say, oh, we are working on this. They really need to look into these sectors at this time, because nobody knows when something like this will happen again. And we are even talking of the next one. We are still in this one.
Yeah, it's very important for farmers. Without food, we cannot.
Yes, it's very important. And they need to also. And I'm talking about individuals. The government needs to find a way to engage more farmers in this season. This is April. Farming season is about to begin. We cannot ask people to be indoor when the farming season is on. Yeah. If you do that, Nigeria is going to have famine next year. Once we are not able to produce at least 20 to 30% more of what we have been producing in the previous year, Nigeria is going to have a problem with farming. Because if you ask people to stay indoor and they are unable to go to their farms, it will affect the products, the output, the agricultural output for next year. And when it does, prices will skyrocket because of the scarcity and shortage, and it will become a problem. So the government needs to engage more farmers this year as much as possible. There are so many young people who want to go into agriculture, who have the knowledge. Maybe they don't have the finance to begin with. They don't have the land. We need to do something very fast so that our agricultural product can increase next year.
We hope the government listens and hasten their efforts. All right, thank you so much, Mr. Edward Bukuje, for coming on TV, and it's good to have you today.
Thank you.
All right, that's much we have for you today on TVN Business Daily. I'm Chiwende Osisiago, and don't forget you can follow us on all our social media platforms, on Facebook, on YouTube, and of course on Twitter at Television Nigeria. Do have a wonderful day.